Carl Rogers, a man who was born in Chicago in 1902, was able to read just 5 years later. He would go on to develop one of the most groundbreaking therapeutic philosophies that you may apply to your daily life. I'll quickly explain what it is, how I did it, and the incredible impact it had on my communication and people skills. The early 1900s saw the fortunate birth of a guy of extraordinary intelligence. Carl Rogers was his name. This man's education began quite early because, surprisingly, he was able to read before he ever entered kindergarten. Over the years, his hobbies slightly shifted, but he finally discovered what he really desired. It was psychology. He so pursued his studies and became a psychologist. He assisted children throughout his early psychology years and created a compassionate and non-judgmental therapeutic approach, likely because at the time, all children wanted was to be heard. Rogers discovered something in psychology that is now widely accepted but has far more potential than first believed. Active listening was a key component of the person-centered therapy he established. You've undoubtedly heard it before, but it's not what most people believe it to be. Even when Carl simply listened to his patients in a particular way, he discovered that, before I show you how I did it, I'll show you what happened when I attempted it. One day, I asked myself, what may most people think when they listen to someone who is constantly talking about themselves? The majority of what people say these days just goes unheard since so few individuals are truly heard. The need to comprehend and be understood is the most fundamental human need. Listening to others is the best approach to understand them. There is no better feeling than being heard. And when I incorporated active listening into my social life, it helped others feel truly understood and acknowledged. Everyone around me became more content and self-assured as a result. They reached conclusions they wouldn't have reached on their own after actually listening to someone. Consequently, it further improved their mental well-being. However, the actual talks also improved. The most outrageous and genuine things I've ever heard were uttered by people when I listened to them in a way that made them feel more genuine and honest. It led to a number of fascinating and entertaining discussions. All right, then what is the real proof that active listening is effective? In order to accomplish that, we must examine Rogers' techniques. Clients gained self-awareness and assisted in their own recovery when Rogers' techniques were applied. They had greater faith in the listener and thought that some aspects of themselves were more acceptable, and they were happier. Stay put because I want you to do this. Active listening is now utilized practically everywhere. In schools, workplaces, communities, and of course therapy, thanks to his groundbreaking techniques. What's the best part? In contrast to quantum physics or chaos theory, this is rather simple to understand and begin learning. In reality, how did I accomplish this? Active listening is not the same as regular listening, though. You may be aware of it, but simply remaining silent during a conversation is not the same thing. Being present was a first step toward improving one's ability to listen to others. However, I also had to pick up a few new abilities and tools. Understanding that these are tools rather than steps was crucial. These aren't only pointers. They're abilities I could acquire and use if I ever needed a deeper understanding of someone. It's also critical to keep in mind that every statement has both the information and the emotion that accompany it. Responding to and comprehending one or both of these is a component of active listening. I needed to be sure I wasn't going crazy first. Let me explain. I began summarizing and paraphrasing what the other person had just stated in a brief and organic manner. In response to someone who said, "I find it hard to believe they would really love me if they knew me," I would say, "That's right, that's exactly it." I would fairly casually and naturally repeat back what I believed I had heard, in a style that the other person would find acceptable. This virtually eliminated the possibility of any miscommunication. It made sure we were both in agreement. Even Rogers discovered that he was occasionally mistaken. However, I was lacking something as significant. As they spoke, I had to learn to understand. I had to tell them to keep moving forward. If someone believed I wasn't even listening, why would they continue to speak to me? All it took to do this was to avoid looking at the other person emotionlessly. After all, there's a reason it's called active listening. I only needed to use minimal encouragers, which are nonverbal indicators of interest. This was a great method to get the other person to keep talking. Here's an illustration. I may say, Something tells me they will, in response to someone who remarked, "I'm not sure they'll truly accept me." Simple, organic encouragements. I don't go overboard, but I also take my time answering rather than answer with the first thing that comes to mind. But what about the fact that words don't always express how we truly feel? What are some ways that I can listen with empathy? How can I try to better comprehend other people's emotions? It was at that point that I learned about emotion labeling. It's the process of practicing sympathetically identifying someone's feelings after you've spoken with them for a short while. It has a comparable impact, so it's acceptable if you get it wrong. I started doing this, and I steadily improved. I might remark something like, "You seem happy," or "It sounds like you're having a rough time." This facilitates the development of an emotional bond with the other individual. They feel better because they feel heard, and it aids in their self-understanding. This was a little weird at first, but it worked fine as long as I did it organically and casually. Probably the most astounding thing I have ever done was this last one. It was the most straightforward method of improving listening skills, but it was also the most challenging. By showing interest in other people, you can create more friends in 2 months than you would in 2 years by attempting to pique their interest in you. It's likely that you have heard this quote before. I'm showing it to you, but why? Since it is accurate. Wanting to understand someone is not the same as just listening to them. The most important thing is to genuinely want to listen. I came to see the importance of genuinely wanting to comprehend people. It became easier, and I improved my active listening skills after practicing. I discovered how fascinating individuals can be when I took the time to truly understand them. As a result of these encounters, we develop an attitude that enables us to be really interested in the speaker. I became more charismatic as a result of this. Now, you should definitely watch some of my older films if you enjoy this kind of content. And perhaps, just possibly, stay for the next ones. I should be posting sometime next week, assuming I don't pass away or something.